When we started Bioventures, we were diverse from the beginning. What you realize that when you have different views, you start a discussion with each other. You look at investment opportunities from different angles.
If you isolate the gender, do you think there's a correlation? And we need more role models.
Yeah, you need to show that it's feasible. I think role models, being a woman and setting up a fund is one role model. Being a woman setting up a company is another one. The moment you have these showcases, these role models, people think, oh, it's feasible. I can do that.
Sander van de Wante mentioned, we invested in Argenx when there were like 5 people. By preparing this interview, I realized you were the one.
It's true. And I think there were even 3 people.
3 people, okay. Bienvenue to a new episode. I'm your host Philip, and on this show I'm interviewing the best Europeans in biotech to help you grow. There are only very few top women VCs in European biotech. There is Kate from SV, Raphael from JTO, Regina from Wellington, Henriette from Sofinnova, and there is Christina from Bioventures. So while I was in San Sebastián, I caught up with her. We talked about her path to get there, but also the benefits of gender diversity for biotech investing, but also for the biotech ecosystem in Europe as a whole. We also talked about her investment in Argenx when there were 3 people. We talked about the venture creation drop since 2022. So here's my conversation with Christina, and if you're enjoying it, please hit the like and follow button. All right, welcome to the show, Christina.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Great. And I made you discover this part of the beach of San Sebastián.
Well, I'm very happy you took me here. I was inside in the conference the whole day, so it's amazing view, and it's a good spirit for being here.
It's really cool to biotech and beach, so yeah.
It's a work-life balance. I think it's quite a good one here.
A good take to show it. So I want to start with, say women in biotech. I think you are one of the very few managing partners of a European biotech fund, and especially one of the very few who have founded a biotech fund. So I'm wondering, can you just share, just how it feels to be in that position, having that experience?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. It was an interesting ride the last 8 years, and maybe going a little bit back in history. When I started in the industry, I joined ABN AMRO Bank, which then became Forbion. So I was really in a luxury position to become partner with Forbion Capital Partners, a fantastic fund, which really taught me the beginning of the business, which also put me in the position to do what I've done then after my position at Forbion. So that was 2014 when I got the chance, together with my co-founder Willem Bruckert, to set up Bioventures. It's really feeling like going back to some smaller enterprises where you're responsible for everything from the beginning. You're responsible for setting up the entity, setting up the name and the brand, and also, defining your strategy going forward. That's one, but also then executing on it, because in the beginning, 2015, we were, the 2 of us as the co-founder, we had 2 partners on board, so we were the 4 of us doing everything. Yeah. And that gives you quite some satisfaction and also excitement in creating something new.
So, and we will get to V-Bio. I mean, you had some good news, and you closed the second fund. I mean, we'll talk about that. I'm wondering if we stick to that topic of, let's say, women in VC. I saw one of you, or you said, or you wrote that diverse teams lead to better decision maker, hence better business successes.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a bit on it, and what's kind of the? I mean, it seems a bit obvious, but it's not necessary for everyone. And what's the evidence?
What I can explain from our own experience, when we started Bioventures, we were diverse from the beginning. Yeah. Well, it was myself. I have that background in human healthcare, in biotech, being a woman, and partnered up with Willem Bruckert. He comes from the green biotech, being a man. So from the get-go, we had different views on things. And what you realize that when you have different views, you start a discussion with each other. You look at investment opportunities from different angles. Yeah. And as long as you keep an open dialogue and a transparent relationship, I think that helps, because you're not stuck with your own opinion. So the moment you have different views around the table, you express them and you listen to each other. then you take, I think, better decisions because you have more aspects taken into account. And that comes from background, that comes from, education. And that's what we try to do with Flot.Bio, I think, along the way, because you need to look at all the angles of an investment opportunity.
When you think from let's say, just if you isolate the gender, you think, especially from the investing point of view, you will have like typically different views, or you will look at different things? Do you think there's a correlation?
Well, what is known is that man and female, they communicate differently. And of course, if somebody else communicates with you, you have a different perception of it. And sometimes what you see, you have this confirmatory bias. You talk to somebody who is like you and you are engaged with that person and you're convinced. But if somebody with a different background listens to that conversation, maybe that person picks up different items in that conversation. So I think that's important, that the way you communicate and the way you perceive communication.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I talked with Baija from Immunocore on the show, and we talked quite a lot about this as well. And what was interesting with her was saying, okay, it's not only fair, but she was really making the business case, basically. Like, in the team or at Immunocore, bring more diversity in gender diversity and also race diversity just leads to better decision and to a better business. So that's also partly better. I quite liked she was very frank about it, very direct. Like, I'm doing it for business mostly, and not just about fair.
Yeah.
And sounds like from what you're saying, it's also going in a similar direction.
For us, it's a consequence thereof. I think it leads to better business, but it needs something you would like to engage. You need to be open to accommodate different views, and you need to be open to accommodate different characters in your team. It's not only about getting these people, but also retaining them and creating a platform where people feel welcomed and accommodated. But I'm with her. It leads to better business decisions, and we should in the industry drive for more input and diversity.
That's great. I think you are. Let's see.
It will stay dry. Don't worry.
Stay dry. I mean, and we need more, I think, role models. I think that's also why I'm trying to get also more gender diversity also in the speakers I have. And I think role modeling and for people listening, I think is super important as well.
Yeah, you need to show that it's feasible. I think role models, being a woman and setting up a fund is one role model. Being a woman setting up a company is another one. The moment you have these showcase, these role models, people think, oh, it's feasible. I can do that.
It inspires.
And it's always exciting, and it's a bit nerve-wracking when you set up a new fund. You don't know if it will happen. Of course, you have the conviction that you're good and you can do it. But really, to jump on something, we need to tell people that's good to jump, and mostly you land on your feet. And if you're not landing on your feet, you have your plan B. But people need to dare to do that, and that's something we're working on. Especially,
I guess, in Europe, where we tend to be a bit less risk-taking and everything. And I quite like this also, your background. I mean, you're very European background. You're German. You just mentioned so you studied in France, or now you work. I mean, you live in Amsterdam. You work a lot in Belgium. I mean, I quite like this part as well. And I think, can you expand a bit on this, on how it benefits you, say on a day-to-day, to be so European?
But it benefits me because people are different. The German is different than the Dutch or the Belgian. And I'm not saying it's really the nationality. I think that all our history and education brings us where we are. And also, when coming back to communication, it brings us how we perceive communication, how we communicate, how we give feedback. And there's nice literature around it, like the Culture Map. It's a really nice book where you realize that how people react, it's sometimes individual, but always also how they were educated. And the moment we are aware of that, we can handle it and we can take it as a positive and also deal with it. So maybe because I've lived in different countries, which from an American perspective probably look all the same. They are not. Well, the French is different from the Dutch and the Belgium. And maybe because I'm home in more of them, people also will forgive me a bit. But it helps to open your eyes.
That's good. I mean, I would 100% agree. Also, coming from kind of French-German background and living and traveling and working in different countries. I think also, I mean, from what you said, I mean, especially in your position, investment, I mean, obviously you're very tied to Belgium and VIB, but you also invest Europe-wide and you look for co-investors Europe-wide and talents Europe-wide. I mean, especially in Euro, you're very European, so I guess it helps us to understand the other people. But what I also what I'd quite like to do is to be able to not only communicate, but like adapt really to the person in front of you, depending on to the nationality or personality, like how, like, I don't know, how helpful, basically. I guess.
I think it's true. When we set up Flot.Bio Ventures, well, we said one thing to our initial investors: look, we are located in Belgium. We have a strong foothold here. We would like to create companies in Belgium. But in the beginning, our idea was to bring international investors to our companies, and that was something we found very important, and we managed in the first fund to do so. But that means we need to go out of Belgium. We need to broaden our network and work with people in other jurisdictions and in other countries.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe a last kind of point on this topic. I had Agnete Felixen from NICODE on the show, and we talked quite a lot about this, and she was very open also on like a bit deep on like her experiences as a woman founder and what worked and what didn't work and some challenges. And in short, she said one thing, like, basically, don't go to the party. Like, just skip the party. It's basically better. And actually, that I remember with you, I think we were at a conference in Basel or something. And I don't remember exactly where, but we went then with a group and we had a drink, and you were like super chilled and open about it. I don't know, it stuck to my mind. Like, was it also your experience, or how do you approach this kind of situation? Like,
how you mean not going to the party?
Yeah, like, I mean, she was saying not going to party because basically at the party at some point it can, as a woman, can be a bit like not comfortable basically. And you were, I mean, at least my experience with you was like,
well, I've never experienced that, I have to say. Okay. I think the social aspect of any business is an important one, because what you realize in these interactions outside of the cubicles, one-to-one meetings, you build trust and you build a relationship. And of course, well, everybody needs to respect boundaries where nobody should cross these boundaries. I haven't seen them in our area. But I think to interact with people on different levels is important, because when we invest in companies, we invest into people.
Yeah.
So seeing these people outside of the cubicle, outside of the lab, is an important part, how people react in different situations, and also, well, how you get that second layer of trust into somebody, into a company. It's super important. So I think these social events are maybe often underestimated by the female colleagues, because it's in the earlier days, well, do your work, do it good, stay at your desk, and then you will be promoted. But that's not how it works. It's multi-layered, our business, and it's a lot of people business here.
Especially as an investor, I guess.
Of course, you shouldn't exaggerate, and you should respect the boundaries.
It's good to hear like more positive experience. And you mentioned Forbion, and you started there. You became partner, and Sander van der Wante was one of the, I think, co-founder of Forbion, I think, was on the show. And he mentioned, we invested in Argenx when there were like 5 people. And then by preparing this interview, I realized you were the one.
That's true. I think there were even 3 people.
3 people. Okay.
No, that's true.
You were the one leading, and you were on the boards. Can you tell a bit about the story of how the investment came to be, how you came to invest, and then like...
Yeah, when basically Tim, Torsten, and Hans, the 3 founders of Argenx, they were out fundraising. And I think it was 2008. It was just when we had Forbion had the first closing of the Forbion fund, and it wasn't an easy time to raise funds. There were 2 seed investors already in the company, so they had a little bit of money to go out. But then at the time, it was Forbion taking the lead and putting out the term sheet for an A round. And we went around the block to look for co-investors. At the end, there was a nice syndicate. LSP joined, and we got some Belgian investors to the table.
How much was the round at that time?
I think the initial A round was like 12 million euros. Okay. So not that much, but it was sufficient to prove the technology. Yeah. And of course, there were mistakes made or the errors made. Well, not all the programs we started in the beginning, were still alive after a few years. What I have to say with this team, and it counts to diversity. Of course, they were all male, but they were different in character. So the three of them, they always had to discuss among themselves before they take a decision. And I'm pretty sure there were tough discussions, but pointing to the theme of diversity, they come out stronger with it. Yeah. And it was a fun time. I think I learned a lot, but taking the journey, we had the A round, we had then the B round, pre-IPO, then the IPO on Euronext first, which also was a long discussion. Shall you go direct to Nasdaq or Euronext first? At the time, you always take the decisions with the knowledge you have at the time and with the data you have at the time. I think that was decided. It took some time then to go to Nasdaq, and then that was also the time when I left the board. That was the time when Philip.Bio came up. Much of my time was required there, and also the Argenx grew. They needed different input on the board. The companies you involved.
It's natural,
but it always has my heart to it. I have to say.
And now it's crazy. I mean, $20 billion company. I mean, massive success story.
It's also very much from the beginning the strategy, keeping your products close to your chest, developing them as far as you can. And that was what Argenx has done. They brought products to the market. They had follow-on products to the market. And also in the past, they were always open in, what can they do? What a partner can do? Looking outside, working with academics to insource new ideas.
And especially also, advancing, the balance between developing your own platform and your assets. I think they were really good. Good at this.
It's all, but when we speak about role models, there are a few role models. The model is a role model, but also the management team is a role model. Where also at some point in time, people from management team said, this becomes too big for me. I'm better performing in smaller companies like Thorsten Dreyer. We were super happy that he joined one of our startup companies, which is Agomab in the early days. So there you see this cross-fertilization, allowing people to develop, even if it's outside your own organization. That's something where the industry and the ecosystem around Benelux, I think we are growing there.
Yeah, it's... I had Edwin from Argenx on the show as well, and he mentioned this. I think he mentioned that over 10 people from his management team at Argenx are now running or founding biotech companies. Yeah. Not only in the Benelux, I guess, but let's say Europe or but still crazy.
We're one lucky of them where we have Cedric Verweken from Argenx, who's our CEO of Confer Therapeutics. Okay. But that's exactly what you need. They have such a learning curve, such an experience within these larger organizations. But at some point in time, it's either because of the structure, because of their own character, they would like to do something else. And more than welcome to join our smaller companies.
I think it's totally normal. It's funny because I feel like in biotech, it's always seen a bit differently, but in tech, it's pretty normal, and almost encouraged if you are, let's say, at Google or some startups and you want to go on to found something, for example, usually the team will support you. And for all the reasons you mentioned, but that's good. I think it's one of the underestimated thing in Europe. Yeah. How many, compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, how much more talent pool and founder pool and is on top of the money, which is maybe more visible, but the talents.
It's also one of the aspects, at least at Philip.Bio, we had at the beginning while we creating new companies. But that means we also need to create the new management teams because every CEO was a first-time CEO at some point in time. So what we realized, the moment you give people, of course, people need to be the right character and have the right ambition, but you need to also give them the responsibility to grow. It's sometimes I have the examples.
The chance to grow,
Sometimes I have the examples. It's like a snowball sitting on the top of a hill. If that snowball doesn't roll, it doesn't become bigger. So you need to roll these snowballs in order to become bigger and get to the gravity to become the next serial entrepreneur and serial CEO.
I like that. I like your mindset. And I guess and you proved it with Argenx, and I guess on Argenx also, for you personally to set up Philip.Bio, I guess was great track record, basically.
Yeah.
I guess the return is not public, how much you really made on the return, but I can imagine if you invested in a, 12 million Series A.
I guess you need to ask Forbion for that.
I can just imagine. I don't know when was the IPO or how much they raised, but I can imagine it's a very, very nice multiple. So
it's a nice success story, and I think it's a good return for all the investors in there.
Yeah. But I mean, for you, then, I mean, it's a perfect transition to VBio. I mean, you started it, and I think VIB was one of the LPs, basically.
Yeah, VIB is our partner and a smaller LP in the fund.
Smaller LP, okay. Can you tell the creation story of like what made you jump?
Argenx is almost a little starting point to VBio, because through Argenx, which was, it's a Dutch company.
Also VIB, Argenx.
Yeah. But so Argenx is a Dutch company with a big footprint in Belgium, so all the activities are there. And being on the board is my network in Belgium also grew, and that's where maybe I came into the picture for that fund. So it was definitely something driven by the VIB. It was Johan Kadoen's vision to have a fund which is closely affiliated, but an independent fund, works in the ecosystem to helps to translate or transfer the science from the academic into industry, into startup companies. And there is a bit of history of the fund, but at some point in time, it was really they contacted a recruiter to find management team, which wasn't seemingly that easy to find management team for a new fund. And when they called, I still tell the story. In the beginning, I said, no, I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine with Forbion. We're just growing. And then more in the second thought, I said, well, why not? We always tell our scientists, if you have an idea and if you have a vision, you need to jump. Yeah. And then I thought it through and think, well, why not? Now I've learned so much the last years within ABN AMRO and Forbion. This is a chance to put it into practice, to everything what you've learned, to make your own mistakes, build your own organization, and going back to earlier stages. That was, I think, the combination which attracted me. That's where we at VBio are good at. That's where we can help the most and have the most impact too. Yeah. And having a research organization who wants to collaborate, I think that's also important.
Nice.
And in the first 5-8 years now, we learned from each other. I always tell that, because we've done things as we thought we would do, but then hearing how a technology transfer organization deal with that, what challenges they have, and what is important to them. It's important that it fits both parties, not only the investors, but also the TTOs.
Nice. I didn't know the story. I mean, it sounds like VIB really kind of seeded.
Well, it was the vision of Johan Kadoen to have this fund, and of course there needed to be more. There needed to be other investors. We of course had the support of the European Investment Fund in the first fund. We had some local public money, and then at the end, Willem and I, the management team. I think that was the combination you needed. You had the proprietary deal flow, you had the investors, and you had the management team. And then that was the starting point where you could grow.
Yeah, nice. Actually, and now, I mean, even for the audience, I mean, you closed the second fund, final closing 110 million euros, March 2022. That's amazing.
Yep.
I mean,
and we're now investing
out of the 100 million bar. I guess it's
super. Yeah, and we're now investing out of that fund, and we just announced our last, the last investment, not our last investment, with Flinder Therapeutics, and we're now looking to add more investments to that fund.
Right. And I saw Shelley Margetson join. Yeah. I knew her from GetData,
that was also a nice fit when you look at, diversity comes back in our conversation, I think, multiple times. When she was CEO of one of our portfolio companies where we outlicensed the lead asset, and then it was really what is her next step in the organization.
In GetData as well.
No, she was with Mirrors before, then went to GetData. There she did a build-to-buy exit. Then she joined one of our portfolio companies and became CEO there. When that company had outlicensed it was a single asset company, the lead asset. And it was really the question, what is the next step in her career? And when we spoke and I asked, did you ever think about venture capital? And she was like, well, actually I didn't. And then we spoke. She got to know Willem, my colleagues. Yeah. And realized that this really has added value to have, well, a different background in the team. She has a financial education, but is in the biotech industry for the last 25 years. So we're really happy to get that diversity broadened.
That's amazing. That's great. On the actually on the VIB and on tech transfer a bit more at large. In the past, I think 10 years, every time I talk with people about tech transfer, like 90% of the time is very negative, like very negative, at least in Europe.
Yeah.
And then the only thing that I hear when I hear positive thing is VIB, basically. Almost like a bit in the UK, a bit, Sarah in France, a bit better. When I hear about the US tech transfer, some of it is very positive. Like Stanford is like, wow, it was a dream working with them compared to others. But VIB, I hear very good things. And I mean, I understand also from our discussion, and they seem very focused also on tech transfer as an institution. Can you talk a bit more on like what they understood? Why are they recognized so well for tech transfer? Why it works?
Well, first of all, of course, they have quite some history. They were set up in 95, so we're now approaching quite some decennia of experience. Yeah. The organization is a professional organization. There are people with IP backgrounds. There are people with business development background, people in company creation. So this experience and having seen a lot helps, of course, in negotiation, because these people understand, well, every deal is different. But you have some boundaries where you know, well, this is what the investor needs and this is what the TTO needs. I guess the difference is, especially where we had discussions with German tech transfer organizations, you need to find a structure that enables the new created company to raise funds so that you align all the interests. And that's something which is different from a one-off business deal where you try to get as much upfront as you want, which doesn't work for the startup companies. And this is something, the mentality of at least VAB and some of the other tech trusts, they understood that. And it's a give and take. So we also need to establish a structure there. If it's successful, also the tech transfer organization make the money. Because if that doesn't work, well, you cut up your line in the beginning. So I think it's also, again, coming back to the trust that you need to sit together, look at the individual company or the technology, sometimes you have patents, sometimes you don't, and how you deal with that.
Can you be a bit more specific on the deal terms they specifically look, because how they structured it is? Because one thing I hear quite often is a typical tech transfer academia thing, like they think that the idea is worth like way too much and they want whatever, like high 2 digits percentage, and realistically it just doesn't match what a VC or founders would invest.
Yeah, like it comes back to experience. So where I can't disclose any deal terms because they also vary from deal to deal. But what we can say is, when the VIB comes in, they often bring their know-how, their IP as an in-kind contribution. So they are part of the shareholding, but part of the founding shareholder base, which then aligns the shareholders and the investors. And also in terms of realistic view on valuation, we are all interested to be able to raise the next round. If we have unrealistic expectations or the price is too high, well, we got stuck in the next financing round. So that's the experience which comes through us as an investor, but also through them having lived through a couple of spin-outs, that you know appropriately if you start a company with a target and you still need to screen, that you know approximately, well, once you have your candidate, what is the market paying for that? And you need to make your calculations.
You know the range. And it sounds like, I mean, it comes down to another topic from the discussion. It comes down to people and to the experience. I like that. And it sounds like you can really speak similar language. Obviously, you have some different interests, but you know each other's interests. And what I hear sometimes is like, like, forget it. We cannot even talk with them. Like, and I heard that so many times. And like, it's painful, or like, it took 2 years to get the IP out, etc. And like,
and I think it's also important that you speak to the people that can take the decisions. And sometimes I get the feeling that in other jurisdictions in Germany, that's the problem. You have TTOs, but they're are not empowered to close the deals. So you need to go through all hierarchy, getting all your signature on something. And there are people deciding on if we're too far from the business without this feeling, is this valuation a right one? Is that too little, too big? That I hope that if other GTOs are empowered more to really close the deals and take responsibility, that would be an easier discussion. But maybe I'm too naive.
If people in GTO are listening, my hope. I mean, it's a crucial element in biotech. I mean, the tech transfer in general. So.
Yeah, and it does make sense that the rector of a university needs to sign off of deals. It's not his business. It's not his expertise. So these organizations need to hire people with expertise and the foot on the ground.
Yeah, I'm curious also on the similar topic. Also, people related. I've seen, especially in some of the deals you made, some professors at VIB seem quite entrepreneurial as a professor, and deep down, I mean, this plays a big role as well. Can you expand a bit on this? On like, is it true? Is it true that the professors are more entrepreneurial than in, let's say, in other institutes? And where it comes from?
I think it's also philosophy from the VIB from the get-go. They were set up as a translational institute. Yeah. So the professors and the research groups that are part of the VIB, they get re-evaluated every 5 years. Yeah. And re-evaluated is on publications in high-impact journals, on third-party income, and on, spin-outs, patents, some sort of valorization of their science. So there is a mindset of, we do science for the better good, but we also need to bring back something to the society. And maybe that incentivizes people a bit more. Yeah. Of course, there are professors more than others. Some research leans itself more for spin-outs. Well, we are very happy with our co-founder, Professor Jan Steyert, who was co-founder of Argenx, but also on Confer Therapeutics and has more ideas to come. So some of them are more proliferative than others.
Yeah. And I guess there's a luck factor. Yeah. As everything in research, I guess. Okay, that's good to hear. Because I think that's one thing. I mean, I had on the show Jens Nielsen from now DII ex Chalmers DTU, and he spun out I don't know how many, I think close to 10 companies. But when I think in Europe, it's always like harder to find some of these examples of academics versus especially him, or like when I studied or when I lived in Boston. I mean, in Boston is crazy, the scientists, and like I was amazed how entrepreneurial they were, like almost more than me.
But also
I think we could have more of this also.
Definitely, and I think also what you see sometimes, you have these professors, they want to hold on to everything, and they want to continue exercise control. And that's something where we have some troubles too when we set up companies. We'll say, well, you're good as a scientific founder. You have done phenomenal research, which now will be translated into a commercial organization. But therefore, you need commercial people to take it on. And then these professors also need to have the trust in the new management team, because they're not the management team. They need to take a step back, become part of the scientific advisory board, clinical advisory board, still contribute, but not on a day-to-day line management.
And I guess the same thing to understand also what investors want, what the people, just understanding the bigger picture. I think it's, that's good. Well, it's getting, let's see.
It's getting wet.
It's getting wet. Yeah. Maybe on VBio specifically, I mean, what I quite like was what you mentioned, like, obviously you are tied to VIB, but you also like expand beyond, and I think you're one of the best now, really focused on early stage. I mean, biogeneration is another one, tied to Forbion, Curma in France. I want to say, and then I see another trend is like some bigger VCs who also go into venture creation now. I mean, kind of was trendy, let's say, in the past few years. Let's say, especially in the US, the flagship model of Third Rock. How do you see that? How do you like see yourself in this map? Like,
how I see myself or VBio, that's definitely on the company creation side, on the early steps of these companies, where we can contribute, and then also bring our network to the companies to then allow them to grow. What I see with the bigger funds, they also do some company creation. my feeling is that you cannot invest these large amounts what they have raised all in company creation. They will do a few, but they will also need to look at the Series B, the phase 2 companies where they can in one go invest 20 million, because otherwise you will end up with a portfolio of 45 companies. So there will be a shift in what you can do with a certain size of the fund. Our view is that you have an optimum size of the fund for the early stages. But if you raise funds like 500 million, you need to do later stage investments.
Or you do like an arch model where you put 500 million in one company.
Maybe then the diversity or the... well,
it's a different game.
It's a different game.
And I guess that's not even possible in Europe anyway. So maybe on the last topic, you had a very nice blog post. Actually, it's nice you write blog posts. There's not that many you write like insider blog posts, which is great. And one blog post was basically about company creation. Numbers dropped completely. I didn't realize it dropped that much. I will show the figure. Basically in, what was it like? I have it here, but around 100 company creation per year in Europe per year. And then 2022 went down completely. And 2023, I guess, even lower. And 2024, we'll see.
It's good you're referring to that. And of course, we need to see how these numbers evolve. Because what we have done, we've used BCIQ for our database. So we looked at years where the companies were founded. And of course, this is the first time they put out a press release. It could be that these companies were maybe in stealth a year earlier. But I think on the big number movements, that will stay the same. So we need to look in the next year into what will happen. We felt that because when we look around and we see companies that have raised funds, last 1-2 years, they were mostly extension rounds, seed extensions, Series A extensions. We haven't seen that many new companies. They're still there, luckily. And I spoke on the conference also a few people. So we hope that will pick up again, because what we think it's needed. You need the source and the starting point of a new company to be created in order to get to the A and the B rounds, in order to develop new products through the pipelines. So hopefully that's something that will settle on a normal level. Maybe it's an echo from COVID, that there was a lot of company created and then people needed to be a bit more careful. We'll see. We'll follow the numbers. We'll make a new analysis.
A new graph. I feel like there was also a bit of a let's say not hype, but a craze for these like newcos. I mean, between La Biotech and Flot.Bio, I went to Molecular Partners and exactly trying to do that as well, like an entrepreneur in residence, trying to, let's say, looking at newco, could we do a newco? And like so many people talk about newcos, so many newcos being founded, and like I feel like maybe some people also realize that it's not that easy also, and people are more critical. When I started, before I came to ABN AMRO, I was in Germany, where this was the late 90s. We had money from the government because government said, we need to create more biotech companies. At the time, a lot of biotechs were created. They weren't viable at the end. I think the business plan weren't well thought through. And that also, that's now 20 years back. But I think when going with the hypes, if money is available, people get less critical, and I think more is funded. If money is scarce, people are more critical to really looking which euro I invest on which experiment, and then maybe people are more hesitant. Maybe it's a normal cycle and it will pick up again. I guess. But for us, it's good. I think for us, we'll see there's a good hunting ground for science. So you need to roll up your sleeves to create these new companies together with the founders. And we realized that we're now having just a Series A round closed, which took longer than we thought, but I think it's a very nice investment. It's an international syndicate, Flinders. So good companies still get funded. Yeah. I guess for you, actually, it's not too bad either that, I mean, if there's less companies, obviously you have a bit less choice, but at the same time, you're in a position, I mean, you're in a better position, or like... Well, you have less competition in that area. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's always trade-off. Every coin has two sides. Maybe as a final question before we get to it, think two of the success. Let's finish on success stories of the bio. I think one of them was Sindesi, or you pronounce it Sindesi?
Yes, Sindesi.
And I think Agomab can already qualify it quite of a success story. Can you share a bit more on like what made these two a bit
successful?
Yeah, what successful?
Yeah, Sindesi was at the time a spin-out from UCB.
Yeah,
it was an SV2A modulator where a lot of research has been done within UCB to bring the molecule as far as there were, but it wasn't an area where UCB wanted to continue cognitive impairment. They were focused on epilepsy and their existing portfolio. So it was something where the scientists within UCB really said, well, this is a shame. It stays on the shelf and nobody does anything with. So that was, I think, one critical part that these people said, look, we want to do something within. Yeah. If it's not within, it's outside. So that's needed. That's this entrepreneurial mindset you need to get it. And at the end, it was execution.
It shows that, there's so many assets sitting on the shelves in pharma, but you need the people.
And at the end, it's execution. Well, we had a good CEO, Jonathan Savage. We had a good CSO, John Kemp. So they really executed what was the plan, which at the end resulted in a sale to AbbVie.
Yeah, over $1 billion, potential $1 billion at least. Okay, good. And maybe finish on Agomab?
Yeah, it's getting right.
No, we finish.
Yeah, Agomab is really a success story for us. It was very early when we came in contact through Paolo, the scientific founder, with an antibody who does something on c-Met, activating c-Met, and we were like, it's a crazy idea. Everybody wants to block c-Met, but why we move on? So it's really where we started, and my colleague Katja Rosenkrantz, she took the lead on that, and she really drove around with us, with Paolo, to raise the first euros to get it funded. So we founded the company with a 110,000 euro loan in the beginning to really get the first experiments done. And now when you look where the company is now, but
100 million Series C led by Fidelity, which doesn't lead many on.
It's a great journey, but it's also, it goes back to people. Paolo said, well, if this is what it takes to make it a success, I'm in there. So it grew along the line, and then of course we were super happy to get Tim Knodderos as the CEO. He's an energetic person. He has the mindset and the drive, and of course, well, also the guts to acquire a Spanish company, to really fill the pipeline and convince the investor that this is the right thing to do, and that enabled the company where they are now. Now the clinical data need to speak, and we're looking forward to it.
Great, great conversation. I wish we could have spoke later more.
But otherwise we get washed away.
As we discussed before, we understand why things are so green here.
Well, I can recommend everybody to come here, to sit here, have a nice view and a very interesting conversation with you. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you.
Looking forward to your next post.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the end. I'm impressed by how positive her experience was as a female in the biotech VC world. I'm also impressed by how good Flanders, VIB, VBio, Argenx, Argenx are at tech transfer and innovation. I think both sides are really role models. If you have enjoyed the episode as well, please hit the like, follow, review button. Any of these actions would help us a lot. And I would be also curious to hear what you think so I can improve. So please leave a comment wherever you are down below, or shoot me an email at philip@Flot.Bio. Alright, see you in the next episode.